So my name is Camille Newsom. I'm the Director of Grower Support at EnSoil. We got Yazzie with us.
Hey guys, I'm the Director of Marketing at EnSoil.
And I think Jorge and Tucker and Meredith are on the call as well. So we're really glad that you're all with us tonight, and we're really excited for this conversation with Bryan. So a little bit about us. There we go. Our mission is to empower farmers and land stewards in the effective and profitable implementation of a regenerative agriculture system. So we work with growers all over the country, and in some international countries, we're committed to soil health, education, and profitability for these farmers and land stewards and ranchers. We are all guided by our connection to the earth and the interdependence of life. We're inspired by farmers and nature's design and human innovation. And we really believe in this whole system's ecological approach to sourcing food that's economical and nourishing for the people and planet. So the way that we approach our mission is with a live cell algae. It is Chlorella vulgaris is the species. And we grow this algae in South Carolina and in Florida. In the US, we are OMRI listed. And this algae is a biostimulant, a plant stimulant, and it is supporting growers in many areas, including nutritional density, soil health, microbial activity, animal health, as you're going to learn about tonight from Bryan, and many other ways. So if you all have questions about EnSoil Algae after this call, please feel free to reach out to any member of our team. We'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you. And with that, I will introduce Bryan. So Bryan Mussard is the owner of Reminisce Angus Ranch. And Bryan, why don't we start with a little introduction? So can you share the background on the ranch and your priorities?
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's kind of excited to see this many people listening to, our experience with EnSoil Algae. And so Reminisce Angus, we've been in business 41 years. We've been ranching in Montana, Southwest Montana, that whole time, and run 600 registered cattle. We have a 7,000 head backgrounding feed yard. We AI around anywhere, depends on the market, between 1,500 and 2,500 head of custom heifers every year. And so we got introduced to EnSoil through Tucker. He showed up on our place, going on to be 4 years now in April. And he shared about the algae, what it would do. And I really wasn't listening to him about the algae because he was working with a partner on the algae that we fed the cattle. And so we got that out first and had tremendous results on the heifers that we AI'd. The conception rates was the best we had seen in 6 herds in 20 years, having the same heifers AI'd at the same time by feeding this. And then we jumped into the EnSoil. We used it that first year, and we sprayed all 3 of our hay fields. And we didn't really notice a difference while it was growing. We really couldn't see a difference while it was growing until we got the hay stacked. And those bales, I sent a picture to them. They're absolutely amazing. They were super bright green. I took a picture of them, sent them to Tucker, sent in my test results. And I've been looking at feed results for over 30 years. We have a feed lot, and really getting discouraged that all we've been buying for 30 years is protein and tonnage, because the feed, it doesn't matter if it's corn, silage, hay, whatever it is, it doesn't deliver anything else. When we run in our backgrounding feed yard, it's a lot of stress on these calves. Most of them come out of the mountains. They don't have any mineral all summer long, and their guts aren't in real good shape to get through that first 45 days of weaning. So we tested this, and he was pretty sure it would boost our protein and our tonnage. And the protein was exactly the same. We had 2 fields side by side, same irrigation water, same river bottom, same grass, the whole thing. Both fields were 8.29% protein. And so I kind of checked the results and said, that wasn't, we didn't get anything out of it, because that's all I had been looking at for 30 years is protein and tonnage. Now our bales weighed 1441, and the hay that we didn't spray weighed 1285. So it was a significant difference there. Then I picked up the feed analysis again, and I went down all the way down through the trace minerals, and it was amazing how much better the trace minerals were. The manganese and magnesium, potassium, copper, zinc, selenium were all higher in the in-soil hay. And so I kind of forgot about it and said, okay, we got something out of it. And we put the cows back on there in those fields. Before we started feeding in, the mineral consumption dropped immediately on those 3 pastures where we put, and this is in the fall when we put the cows in there. And that was in mid-October. And you'll see a slide here in a little bit. We changed something this last year, but the cattle gained a lot quicker than they normally do in those fields that first year. Even hair coats changed on them. And then when we started feeding those cows, the way they ate that hay, you know, everybody's, when you feed cattle in the winter, those cows will walk down through the winter through those windrows, and they'll kind of pick. And when we'd feed these algae bales, because we'd feed a couple of them and a couple of the other ones, they would just eat them like a swarm of bees. It was just amazing watching them. And then I started, you know, it had been 4 months and lots going on and hadn't really paid attention. Then I realized, you know, look at the way I just started watching how they ate that hay. And so we noticed that the first year. Second year, we sprayed all the fields again. And it was pretty interesting because we had a lot of rain that second year. And the hay that we put our young cows on, that field, that hay had been laying in the windrow for 3 weeks. And it was yellow. I mean, it was just terrible looking hay. We should have just left it in the windrows and forgot about it. But we put it up. And those young cows, we decided we better buy some nice hay. So we bought some really nice grass alfalfa from some neighbors, fed it alongside those algae bales that were just yellow. They just looked like poor grain hay. And those heifers would not touch that beautiful hay until every stem was gone out of that old hay. It was just amazing. And they didn't do that great on it because, like I said, it was in pretty tough shape. It was just glorified straw. But there was something in the feed, and we really started noticing those cows were picking up something in the feed because they weren't eating near as much mineral. And this was the second winter in on it. And then I'll kind of go into, we breed in September and October, so it's not the ideal time for nutrition. Going into your, you know, most people are breeding out on green grass, so they're feeding a lot of second cut and hay, and we don't. We just turn them out on these meadows and on sagebrush hillsides sometimes when we have to, and we let them eat all the protein we can. And for 13 years, it's an average of somewhere around 15% opens. It's just tough to do. And especially our yearling heifers. And we don't feed them grain to try to make up for it or anything. We don't get them fat. And so we decided in 2023 to spray the summer pasture that the yearling heifers were on. And couple things happened, more than a couple of things. Those heifers were about 115 pounds heavier when we AI'd them. Our AI rate, our conception rate, oh, you got that up right now. So that would have been 2023. We didn't really change our conception rate. As a fact, it was a little bit, we had a few more opens. We cut the breed back a little bit, but the amount of AI'd heifers was significantly higher. And those heifers were heavier. So they brought back more money. And the other thing it did is typically it's 19 bags of mineral over 3.5 months for 135, 125 heifers. They ate 1 bag of mineral when we sprayed that field. So we picked up some things, noticed some things. Sprayed that field again this last year. Again, the heifers were just super fat, had a great breed up, even better. This slide, we only had 6% opens. The heifers were big and fat again. It has really changed things, and they've just completely backed off of eating mineral. We had another field that we sprayed. Now it's been 3 years, and our 3-year-olds, you know, anybody that's breeding 3-year-olds, whether you're on green grass or not, that's a tough group, and it's really tough when you're trying to get them bred in September and October. And normally we breed those in a real high mountain pasture. We don't bring them down to do anything special, throw all the protein we can at them, and that's a tough group. And this year we hauled them 80 miles down to that field that had been sprayed. It had been sprayed 4 times in 3 years. And we hauled them and threw them out there. And those guys were only 8% open. That's the best we've had since June breeding. And they were fat, they were in good shape, their calves were heavier. Typically, we'll put out 9 bags of protein in that field in the fall. This year, those 9 bags lasted 6 weeks, and our conception rate was unbelievable. The calf weights were heavier. I didn't get the calf weights in here, but calves were significantly healthier and bigger this year. So on our own cows, just spraying the fields, the plants are really getting something out of the ground, and the plants are really starting to feed those cows. And so it's paying for our mineral, and the increased conception rate has paid for the algae. And so it's the first thing we've ever used. It's actually lowering our budget. We're getting something back out of it. It's not just another additive.
So Bryan, how are these outcomes impacting your management? What have you changed over the last couple of years since you've started working with the algae and seeing these outcomes in the conception rates and mineral and feed values?
Well, we're really just starting to kind of pick up a lot of the data, and our management changes. What we're doing now is we're able to take our mineral that we've been using, and we're mixing 50-50 with salt. Cows are doing fantastic. The breed up is better. The calf health is better. What we're going to do this year is do a test plot where the pairs run when they come in a month before breeding, and spray that field and see what that does to those as well. We're actually, okay, so the other thing we're doing in management, we have extra hay, and this is all wild hay. It's all grass hay. We're hauling this hay into our feedlot. We'll take about 300 ton in there, and all the new cattle that come in there, this is what they get fed for the first 4 days plus the mineral. And then another testimony is our son brought his calves in this last year. They had been on a field that had been sprayed with the algae for 2 years now. And typically when we wean cattle in our feedlot, we'll put 100 head of calves in a pen. We'll put 2 full bags of mineral in a pen with them overnight. We'll feed them long hay. We'll put some babysitter cows in there, and all of that mineral's gone within 24 to 48 hours. Nothing left, because like I said, these calves come out of the mountain, they haven't had anything, they're hungry. Silas's calves went in there was 116 calves, and those mineral bags lasted a week. So that just says they were getting something out of the ground. So just another testimony of what's happening when you spray this on these plants.
Yeah. Thank you, Bryan. This is so great and so exciting to hear about this with the cows. Can you talk a little bit about your application, how you are using it from a practical standpoint? I know Greg just put in the chat if you could let us know the spray rate of EnSoil per acre that you use, the approximate water volume to spray this, and then we can get into your question about drought, Greg, in a little bit.
Yeah, so far we've only had one field of 9 that we've been spraying, 2 fields out of 9 that I've been able to spray twice. Usually we just spray them the end of May. We get through all these fields, and then if we have time after stacking, we'll get another one done. And so 2 fields have only been sprayed twice.
And that's twice in the same season, right?
Yeah, twice in the same season. And so the rest of them, we've only been able to get to them one time. They're all flood irrigated. So the water's out when we're spraying them. And the second time it is not. So you only get one cutting on the hay, grass hay, and then there's not much up here. It's real gravelly ground. So we put it on afterwards. I will say again, I did not get to this data, but we used to just get 2 crops off these meadows. We get these cows off of here in the last 5 years. Well, the first 5 years we were here, cows would go off the hay meadows the 1st of May and go up to summer pasture. And then we would just grow a hay crop, and we would get some aftermath grazing. Now with the algae, we're grazing these fields for 30 to 45 days longer, and we're still getting the same amount of hay, same amount of we're actually getting better hay because we're grazing that a little bit and it doesn't get near as rank as it used to. And we're getting the aftermath grazing. So we're getting 3 crops off of it instead of 2 now.
And are you adding anything in with the EnSoil? Are you using other inputs? What is that looking like for you?
No, we haven't put any. 2019 was the last time we put straight nitrogen on this place. And then we went 3 years and did nothing. And our production just went through our socks. We had nothing. We were putting up nothing. And then when we started putting this back, we're starting to build our tonnage back up with it, but we don't add anything else. I think this year we're going to add some kind of carbon amendment to it. We don't know what we're going to put on, but that we'll probably let you guys help us pick that one out.
Yeah, we've been hearing from folks that humates, our humic acid products, have been a really nice complement with the algae because of the carbon source. We can definitely talk more about that. So Greg is asking about if you can expect results during a drought, and have you sprayed EnSoil in drought years, and sort of let's talk maybe a little bit about stress adaptation, what you've noticed and how you see that playing out in your fields.
Ours are irrigated, and so far 2021 we didn't use it, and so it would have been 2022 was the first year we put it on there, and 2021 was a terrible year. We literally had no water to put out, and so we've always had a little bit of water to go with it. And on our real gravelly ground, that grass is staying greener longer even after we shut the water off. And I know we've had a couple friends one in eastern Montana and one in western North Dakota that have put it on dry land and had pretty good success with it in drought years. I mean, and they've done it 2 years now. So 1 year was pretty dry and the other year was average.
Awesome, thank you. Would you mind telling Steve what the pH of your soil is?
I wouldn't mind, because I don't know the pH of my soil. That's Liz's job.
All good. Okay, they just muted themselves. No problem. So let's zoom out just a little bit, and then I want to get to Casey's feed values. But Bryan, what are you seeing as the connection between using the algae in your fields and these health measurements? You talked a little bit about the nutrition. You talked a little bit about the breed up. What are you seeing as this kind of connection? You're very observant of your animals, and you've been noticing this for years. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just think there's a real visual effect that I've seen with our cows. I mean, it's striking to me because, the greatest thing about calving in June is they all have their ears when they're born. They don't freeze. The worst thing about calving in June is you got 60 days of green grass for especially a 2 and a 3-year-old cow that's growing, changing teeth, nursing a calf for the first time, even a bred heifer trying to grow up. That's not a lot of time. And then when all that nutrition's going out of that feed, you're trying to breed her. And I don't know, this stuff is just like it's given us 60 days more of green grass, 60 days more of incredible nutrition that I don't have to spend money on. And that's the noticeable difference in these cows: their hair, their flesh ability, the conception rate, the added weaning weight. I mean, all those things add up. And then at least we're physically able to add something on paper and subtract the cost of something else. And like I said, we've been buying the best mineral we can for 30 years in the feedlot and for our cows, and seeing just a little bit. The more you feed, the more you get. And this stuff is not like that at all. I know that our initial sick pulls on the calves at the feedlot, they respond, they go on feed quicker when we give them that hay that's just had it in there. And that's just giving them trace minerals. I mean, we don't have to go out and mine it. The grass is mining it from the ground. That's what's so neat about it.
Yeah. Have you seen any visual differences with your soil?
Yeah, the first year I put it on, I thought, I kind of felt crazy. I felt like maybe I was fooling myself, or I put that stuff on there, and I was out there a week later, and I felt like I was walking on a sponge. And I thought that was just me being excited about it until somebody else used it and told me that when they sprayed it on the ground felt really soft when they were walking on it. And this one field up by our house is just a solid gravel bar. And typically we'll just run water straight out of the ditch out there, as much water as we can for 30 days, and you never see it. It just runs out the ditch and straight in the ground. And in about 25, 26 days, it'll start percolating back up, and the ground just bubbling because the water's just finally coming back up. Well, this last year, after 3 years of it, that water's running across that ground and getting to the lower ground. And that was really neat to see that we didn't have to wait 3 weeks to get water to the lower end of the field. It was running across the top. And so we're building soil right on top of just straight gravel.
Wow. That's amazing. I love when you tell that story. Okay, we have a couple of questions in the chat. I want to invite Casey. Casey, are you still with us? He may have hopped off. So we'll go through these questions and see if he jumps back on, and then we can show his feed value. So Brian's wondering, do you think that beaver would help with your local water supply?
Think what would help? I missed that.
Beaver. Brian, if you want to unmute yourself and explain.
Am I muted? I'm not muted, am I?
No, I can hear you. Brian Hummel.
Oh.
Clarify if you can. We'll go with Sue. Sue wants to know, what soil tests are you doing, and have you seen differences specifically in the soil tests?
We turned our soil into the Haney test for the first time, and I'm still amazed at what you get out of a Haney test compared to any other soil test. What's available, what's there, what you never have to put on your field again. I can't really explain it. She's coming out this year in June, but the depth of the Haney test really tells the story. And I guess every test we send in from here on out, we'll go through that lab because they share so much information. I do remember saying our pH was in really good shape, but I can't tell you the number.
That's totally okay. What is your take on, and we can kind of help with this question, but will using this algae affect waterways around your ranch?
No, it doesn't. That's another good thing about it, is it's a natural thing. So if you're spraying along a ditch, you're spraying along a creek, or spraying your willows or your flower bed, I mean, it's all natural. It's not like you're spraying a poison. So you don't have to worry about the waterways. You don't have to worry about trees, other plants. So no, there's no concern about that at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we often get a question about algae blooms, and this is a different kind of algae than the algae bloom, which is the cyanobacteria. This is a microgreen freshwater algae. So this algae does help reduce nutrient runoff, which does create the environment that cyanobacteria thrive in. So that's something we've learned through using chlorella. Okay, Brian, did you put this on depleted pastures or good diversity pastures? And then do you see residual results year over year, or did you have to continue to reapply?
So we plan on applying it every year. And you've got, the algae is pulling a lot out of the microorganisms. So there is a balance there. You will have to put something back. But if you just have cows grazing out there, you don't have to give it anything else. I mean, the plants are getting fertilized by the cattle, the natural fertilizer. So we can add, if we really want to grow a robust crop, we could add that. Like I said, we're probably going to use some carbon this year. I have not seen a residual. We just put the same amount. We put 9 ounces on every year, about the same time of year. And our soils were, I guess, depleted. Yeah. They had been putting heavy nitrogen on, and I'm not sure what else, for 54 years on the place that we had. And so when we quit using it, we used it the first year, and it was the biggest crop they had ever seen. One field, 295 bales was our record. We got 318 in 2019 just by putting the same nitrogen on. So then the following year, we got a pretty big reduction. We were down to like 173 bales. Following year was 2021. We were down to 21 bales. That's the year we had no water on it. And so this ground was starved for something. And our neighbors had been sharing with us, that place has had so much fertilizer on it, it's just bound. The soil's just bound up, and we didn't know what we were going to do until we ran into Tucker. And it has really unleashed itself, and it continues to get better every year.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys done any nutritional testing on your beef itself?
Yeah, we've done some. We've just done some. Most of our testing has been for glyphosates, antibiotics, and hormones. Well, look at that. That beef. Yeah, but we haven't done that. I know Tucker has talked about that, and he may jump on there, but there's more and more studies coming out, more and more people thinking that the microbiomes in the soil are the same thing that ends up in our guts, and following that all the way through. And we're pretty close to having a closed system where we can track that all the way from spraying the algae out here all the way to those beef sticks as he's got, and getting it all the way.
Awesome. Have you seen deeper root systems in the pasture?
I don't know if I've seen deeper root systems. I know the grass just stays greener when we shut the water off longer, which tells me the roots are healthier. I don't know what that says about death, but they're chasing the water down. As the water goes away, there's obviously the roots are stronger, or maybe they're getting deeper because they pull that water up longer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Have you tested any bricks or leaf analysis and nutrient content? You talked a little bit about your feed values. Are there other testing things that you want to talk about there?
I guess not at this point. I'm more interested in testing our soils and finding out, if we're going to add something to this. Carbon is very, very cheap to add back in there for us, but just finding out what's in that soil is enough for us. And then the feed analysis, I really just want to know what those basic trace minerals are and what the protein is, and I really am not interested in numbers. I see Roger Jacobs is on here tonight. He can tell you too, in our bull sale, I really don't care about numbers. I know we have to use them, but I just look at our cows. I just watch the behavior and the numbers. We're doing numbers all day long, and I know how much mineral they're eating, and I know how much that costs. I know what a bred cow costs compared to an open cow, and the conception rates, and I know what medicine costs and lack of gain costs. And so I don't really pay attention to a lot of those numbers, but it adds up all the time in my head.
Mm-hmm. Bryan, what do you think about looking at Casey's values and then going back to the questions?
His is a great study. His numbers, you can't really refute those numbers. And the color of that hay and the way he talked about, instead of lodging, the plants seemed to be stronger and they grew up taller. And just the ROI, the amount of money he spent on fertilizer compared to what he spent on the EnSoil and the weight of those bales, that tells the whole story right there. The feed values look good. That doesn't really show. That's your basic feed value. Those are the numbers that I was used to looking at for years and years. And so I didn't even look at the trace minerals because we bought those. And then when I went back and picked that up, it was really shocking to me.
Yeah, so these are some of Casey's trace minerals. And Casey, if you can hear us and you want to jump in, feel free. These are some of his trace minerals, and really the story here is about the difference in the cost per acre for relatively the same quality feed.
And this is plowed farm ground too, I think, because he sowed in alfalfa on that. And I don't know if that was how those differences compare. We've put some on with one customer or a friend that's put it on his hayfield that's farmed for years, and we haven't seen much difference in those numbers on that ground that's just been farmed for a long time. And I think I don't know, I'm not a farmer, but I assume it might take a little bit longer to build up soil that's just been tilled and tilled and tilled for 30 years.
Definitely. Yeah, to really build up that biology. This is a great tool for a system that's looking to make that transition to be able to stimulate the biology and be able to produce a crop. Awesome. And if anyone is interested in seeing more of Casey's stuff, this is in our growers report, which you can find on our website, and we'll also send that out in the follow-up email. Also in the growers report is lots of other data from other growers that are outside of Montana. So we'd love for y'all to check that out. So a couple more questions that are in the chat. David's wondering, how are you going to apply the carbon methodology? Where are you going to source it from? I know you said maybe you're not quite sure yet. Any thoughts on that?
No, I've just heard of a couple places, and I've heard some people that have actually mixed it in with the algae and just sprayed it on the same time. And so I guess I tend to, if I can find it and put it out one time, that's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ethan's wondering, what cover are you using as feed for the cattle? Have you ever tried hemp to remove any toxins or pesticides, or sunflowers, or is this all perennial grass, native plants for the focus of the grazing?
Ours is, everything we've sprayed is all native.
Great. Okay, we've touched a little bit on nutrient comparison tests and leaf analysis. If anyone on this call is interested in looking more at feed values, we can definitely connect over that. Jim says, I plant oats in November and fertilize as well. Winter rain is my irrigation. If I apply EnSoil, do I still need to fertilize? I also spray to reduce broadleaf in January and February. Should I stop that? I just grow oat hay and bale for horses.
That's a question for me.
What are your thoughts, and then we can jump in as well.
Well, I don't think it'll interrupt his action at all. Yeah, I would say continue on and just add it to your regiment that you're doing now.
Yeah, that's exactly what we would recommend. So add it in with your fertility, and then depending on your observations and what you're noticing, there may be an opportunity for an input reduction later on, and then improving that ROI. Also, if you're wondering about spraying to reduce broadleaf and stopping that, same thing applies. Continue with the operation that you've been using. Add this in and see what you're noticing. And for crop specific things, oats, hay, bale, grass, covers, it's going to be the same across the board.
So I guess to answer that question a little bit, there's two guys that spray it in their burn down when they're doing that. So when they're doing their broadleaf stuff, they just throw it right in with their chemical and put it out then. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, we have, that's very common with some corn and bean growers that we have, where they'll put it in with their burn down. No problem with tank mixing the algae with that, and that's common. We actually have some people in Iowa that are doing a pre-plant application when they do that for corn. Okay, Steve is wondering, do you have the Haney soil test data of treated and untreated? Maybe we can connect Stephen and you, Bryan, after the call and look at any more data.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share it. I got to go dig it up. It's on an email somewhere from Liz.
Perfect. Okay, so C is wondering, does this product help the producer eventually achieve a closed system, or is it an annual input requirement to benefit from?
That's a Tucker question. I think he said we get to a spot where you may not have to use it. I don't know as though we're there yet, and what we're seeing, and like I said, we're gonna put more back. We got a lot of manure, all these pastures. We run a lot of cows across them in the fall and then the winter before we start feeding them, but we're still gonna add a little bit more. And maybe on the year 5, we don't have to put it down. I don't know. We may just take there's 9 fields or 11 fields here. We may take 3 or 4 of them and not put it down this year and see what happens on year 4.
Hey, everybody, this is Tucker. I'll add a little of that. So we do have in pasture some clients who started year 1 with 3 applications and then have tapered down to 2 and really just planning for 1 at green up this year, but keeping in their back pocket the ability to put more on if they're dealing with some stress and need some additional energy and support for the grass. But I think what we would say, and this goes to the nutrient application as well, it's going to be dynamic. When you're building the life in the soil and using it to support your production, you need to be prepared to probably make some more dynamic decisions as your soil tests annually, indicate that you should. So it's one of the reasons why, when Camille's talking about education and Meredith's talking about education, we emphasize that so much. It's really worth everybody investing their time to learn how to measure biology in their soil and know how to use it to make management decisions. That'll make the algae a more useful tool, as well as the other inputs and management practices.
Awesome.
I couldn't agree more. I would say if you have a Haney test in your hand, it's going to tell you whether or not you need to put what you need to put on your field, if you need to put anything on your field.
Yeah. Casey is back with us and is going to talk a little bit about feed values. So I'm going to pull those slides up, Casey. Are you there?
I am. Sorry, I'm computer illiterate.
You're good. You're good. Yeah, where would you like to start?
Sorry, I missed some. We're in the middle of calving, and I had to run out and put cows in, and had a couple cows calving. So, I'll just kind of I don't know what I missed, but so I'll go over our stuff. We had 2 pivots, center pivots, both straight alfalfa, same variety, Prestige, a cropland variety. It is Roundup ready. I don't know if I said that. They're roughly about 3/4 of a mile apart. Same type of soil, same everything. The fertilizer the fertilizer mix would have been the same for both. So anyway, we put the algae product on and ran fertilizer on the one pivot to the east. And what you're seeing right there, on the left is algae, and then on the right is fertilizer. I can't say we saw a whole lot the first time besides alfalfa standing and not diseased, like with black stem. It's pretty much all we saw in the first cutting. Tonnage was comparable. I think we were off 200 pounds on the algae versus fertilized per acre. But where we really saw a noticeable difference was on second crop. That's probably the biggest thing as a producer. And like Tucker said, I'm sure he said it, I just kind of heard him saying it about, getting a Haney test and getting a fertilizer test and applying what you need to. I just went cold turkey and went straight algae, no fert, and then did just straight fert. And had great results, and at $81 an acre, cheaper, same production. Second crop was a better on the algae. We saw better results. Bales were heavier. And alfalfa is kind of tricky. You can say all you want, but you got to bale it with dew, and that's generally where your tonnages come from. But we baled it all in the same night. I got another guy to come in with a baler, and so we hammered both fields out. We did 154 acres, and we started at about 11 a.m. And had rakes going and stuff. So anyway, but on the second crop is where we had a really, really hot July, August, like everybody else, I'm assuming. And I was shutting my algae pivot off a lot more than I was the fertilized field. And then I saw the plants go to stress mode, start flowering at 1.5 foot, versus algae, it didn't flower until it was supposed to. And so, but then the soil, you could see it holding moisture and doing all this stuff. So it was a pretty remarkable deal, and it really sold me. I mean, I think we as producers are all about what we see with our eyes rather than what someone tries to sell us. And I think Tucker does a great job of educating us, letting us know what his product can do, should do, and will do. And so we went ahead and took the second off. We were short on water, thought we were going to be short on water, so we didn't apply between first and second, and applied after second. And so it'll be interesting to see. And then I applied to the FERT field, and it made me such a believer. We're going to do a bunch of grass hay, and a bunch. We're pretty much going to put it all down on everything, even our grain hay. So cool product, awesome for the environment. Cows, I can't really honestly say that I see a difference in eating of we rolled out a couple, and I think Bryan can attest to this. When our cows see alfalfa, they get pretty excited. So I think they'd eat pretty much any type of alfalfa, no matter how it was or what it's got on it. But I do see the cows; they're a lot darker. The feed's going further. As far as like percentage wise of how much we have to feed. And so I'm really impressed with it. I think on legumes, and I can't wait to try it on some of we're doing a cowboy cocktail, which is going to be peas, oats, barley, radishes, turnips, and collards, and ryegrass and triticale on another pivot down the road. And so it'll be interesting to see how that turns out, because I've never tried it on a grain or grass. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Casey.
You bet.
Appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions for Casey, feel free to throw those in the chat. We got lots more questions for you, Bryan.
Dang.
Okay, so we have a couple questions about equipment. What equipment do you use to spread the algae on pasture land? Do you have any pictures of this equipment? I can say I have no pictures of this equipment in the presentation right now, but we may be able to ask Bryan for a photo.
Yeah, I borrowed a 40-foot boom sprayer, just pulled behind my tractor the first year. And then after we saw the results, then I bought a 40-foot boom 3-point sprayer that we run on a little 110 horse tractor, and that's what we spray all the fields with. We really, up here where we flood irrigate, the ground is just not level, and you can't get a wider boom out there. You're always banging it off the ground, and it's more ideal to run through a pivot. That's the easiest way. Or if you're on flat ground with wheel lines and stuff, or nice flat farm ground, these big sprayers, 120-foot booms would work just fine.
Mm-hmm. How densely do you stock your cattle? How often do you move them, and how long are your rest periods?
So we're not on a real intense rotational grazing, and this ground we'll run we'll put 2 batches of heifers on there, and we'll put it's like 1 heifer per acre for 30 days, and pull them off, and then move them to another field. And that's what we did on the 2 hay fields, and then the pasture that we put on there. The same 135 heifers, and they're on, let's see, that would be 180 acres. And so we'll just leave them on one side for 2 weeks and throw them over to the other side. But we're considering intensive grazing that and seeing if we can't hay. We had so much production, see if we can't hay part of that pasture now that we've been spraying for the heifers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's a couple of folks in the chat talking about carbon source and sugar. So I'll read some of this out, and then we can kind of comment on this, Bryan. But if adding a carbon source with your EnSoil application, it seems like 2 or 3 pounds of sugar per acre would work. Greg's wondering, what do farmers use, and what is the rate for carbon addition? Also talking about adding molasses. So we have lots of growers who are applying algae with molasses. That has been very successful. We can get you some information about specific rates and application methods. Do you have any thoughts on that, Bryan, with sugar?
No, I've heard about it. I mean, Tucker is the first one that mentioned molasses. I'd never heard of that. I've never heard of spraying sugar. It's like we're trying to get sugar away from all the kids, and now we're going to spray our plants with it. So I've never heard of it, but whatever works for the soil. I mean, I'm not afraid to try it.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind that these sugar sources are a great food source for a lot of biology, including algae, but also bacteria So when we're adding a food source for a lot of different organisms, then that may change the competition levels in the soil. Just something to think about, more context dependent for your farm or ranch. Okay, question about, this is an interesting question. Do you see more wild animals drinking from your waterways after treatment with EnSoil?
No, because like I said, there are no wild animals around in the summer. They're all up. That picture where the bulls are, there's elk up there running around. We don't spray anything up there, and down in the hay meadows and stuff, there's irrigation ditches, but we haven't noticed anything. We've been really afraid, as much as the cows do, how good they do on it. We've been really afraid of the elk coming down. We've been lucky so far. They haven't come and hit us yet.
Okay. And Brian Hummel, I know you typed in here a little bit more about the beaver biomimicry. Do you want to ask Brian about this? He's saying these contour beaver biomimicry mulch berms will help keep water on your land and help it infiltrate deeper. The carbon berm washed out, water will do the work to spread the carbon amendments further down gradient and leave it exactly where nature wanted it placed. Seems like a great strategy, and feel free to unmute yourself, Brian, if you want to chat more about this in specificity.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work spreading carbon on the land, and just mulching, land works great. But I've actually found that laying it in slightly thicker rows on contour, sort of like a flood speed bump when you're in arid environments and every drop of rain counts, to set these mulch lines sort of on your topographic lines. They don't have to be perfectly level, but close. You want it to be sort of perpendicular to your slope. That acts as a flood speed bump to help slow, spread, sink, and soak your rainfall into the ground. And that helps you keep your water on your land and turns flooding liabilities into biologically filtered groundwater assets to grow grass for your cows. And it also helps the people downstream to not get flooded out as badly. And I just have found that if you're going to be spending dollars to bring carbon on your property, you can do it in a way that radically slows your water down, even close to the tops of your hills, where it's the most valuable to your ranch.
Yeah, I'd like to visit with you more about that.
No sweat. I'll find you and reach out. And I've got water ranching on YouTube.
Okay.
Awesome. Ron has a question for Tucker of what % of calcium would be in an application. Ron, are you talking about a % of calcium in the EnSoil application or from the application? Okay. So I don't know if Tucker's still on here, but we don't have the algae is just live cell concentrate and water. So there's not an application necessarily of calcium that's going out with the algae. You could apply the algae with your calcium source if you wanted to do that as a tank mix. Does that help answer your question? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Well, and I would add to that, Camille, I mean, it'd be interesting to measure uptake as we see in lots of other spaces where we're in crops, where we're measuring nutrient acquisition in plant and how it's influenced by the application of the algae. That'd be pretty cool to see at some point.
Totally. And we definitely have producers that have been looking at calcium values, whether it's in their feed or in their soil, in the tissue of the plant. So that is data that we can share with you, Ron. Ron says, I thought natural algae had calcium in it. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, we can talk offline. Mike Lee, did you have a question? You got your hand up. Okay, let us know, Mike, if you want to chime in. So Brian, one more question for you to kind of leave us in the last couple of minutes, and then we'll go through our coming up events. So there's a lot of momentum right now in the regenerative agriculture space, and we understand you've been directly involved as an advisor to the new administration. Can you highlight some of the policies or the movement forward that you are hoping to see benefit the beef industry and the agriculture industry at large?
Yeah, everything this whole phone call tonight is going to be front and center. And the regenerative ag movement is, I think the world, especially the US, is finally waking up that just spraying chemicals to kill your plant and spraying chemicals to feed your plant is not going so well. And again, I'm guilty of it. Like I said, all I did is read protein and tonnage reports for 30 years. I didn't think there was anything to it. And now they're tracking us all the way into our food, and we sell beef, and consumers want to know, is there antibiotics in the food? Is there hormones in the food? Is there glyphosate in the food? And we got to be able to answer those questions. And the more people get woke up to it, the more transparent we have to be. And it's been a breath of fresh air working with RFK Jr. For the last 8 months now, as he's all about this stuff. So I think as he works with the Secretary of Ag, there's going to be more incentives to do things like this and start moving away from that. There's going to be more incentives for these great big feed yards that are feeding 90 to 92% corn in their finishing rations to maybe working on a plan now to increase that roughage in there to 25-30% and come up with a plan to, instead of just paying farmers to grow soybeans, corn, and wheat, incentivize them to leave some of those farming acres in grass. And a feeder can pick up a little premium when he's feeding his cows if he's feeding more roughage, because we can't just do away, unless we're going to do away with beer and bread. There's going to be lots of roughage out there to feed cattle, and in a feedlot's the most efficient way to do that. So I think they're looking for the first time the lids off of this thing. There's going to be more incentives to do the right thing starting at the soil. And I really didn't realize how important or how far gone our soil was and how much dirt we've been farming for the last 30 years because we've just destroyed the soil, and how important it is until I met RFK Jr. and the rest of his team. And it was satisfying for us to know that we've been working on something in that realm. He's also going to be, tracking it all the way through to nutrition. They're trying to replace chemicals in our food system, all the way from the soil, all the way to Cheerios in our food. And so that's a bright spot. I feel very, very excited. I was texting him today on a couple of positions going in there, and I feel pretty good about what's coming around the corner for all of us in ag. And we've never had an open door like this to start doing the right thing, because it does pay.
Thanks, Bryan. All right, so we're going to throw up our next events. If anyone has any last minute questions for Bryan or us, feel free to chime in. All right, so our next webinar is going to be on Tuesday, March 18th at 7 p.m. I'm now noticing that this date may not be correct. We do have a webinar on the 18th with Rise Bio, but the Food as Medicine webinar will be a week before that. I believe it's on the 11th. That is on our website on the events page. So if you go to ensoilalgae.com/events, Dr. George Taylor, the founder of Enlightened Soil Core, will be talking about food as medicine and some of the nutrition measurements. Thanks, yes. That we are working with our growers on trying to improve nutrient density in crops and the importance of that to be using food as medicine, both for the animals and for human consumption. We have 3 info sessions that have been scheduled for March and April. Those are the 30-minute short presentation about what we do and some drop-in Q&A, so feel free to join us for those. I will be at Marble Seed this week in Wisconsin, and we have a couple members of our team at the Commodity Classic first week of March, so come say hi to us there. As always, get in touch with us. We would love to connect you with Bryan and Casey and any of our growers that you would love to ask questions to. thank you all for being here. And Bryan, we appreciate you and our partnership, and thanks for sharing your data.
You bet. Thanks for setting it up. You guys have been fantastic. It's real. We're just excited about it. It's natural and it's real, and anybody can benefit from it.